am Orlando Jones, and I just want you to know that the Moana Nui Podcast will be starting soon. Stay tuned, yo.
I'm Veronica Taylor, and from myself and Ash Ketchum, I just want to say, Moana Nui, I choose you!
Aloha mai kako, everyone. Welcome to the Moana Nui Podcast. We are excited to have you all join us tonight as we continue in our Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month celebration. We've had such a wonderful lineup of content this month with lots of Native Hawaiian topics ranging from representing koko on the continent, Heva, should hula be taught to or by non-natives, and so much more. Tonight, we are excited to have our monthly segment with the Center for Asian Pacific American Women and our very good friend, Sue-Ann Hong. But before I do that, let's introduce ourselves quickly. As I said, my name is Moana. I'm the host of the show, also a children's book author for the Adventures of Nakoa and Nohea children's book series, editor and publisher for the Wildcard Chronicles here at Burning Spear Comics, and obviously a champion and advocate for our BIPOC community. Joining me, as always, is my sis, my partner in crime, my wing woman, Dana Morgan. Let her introduce herself as we get started tonight.
Aloha, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in with us tonight. For those that may or may not know me, I am Dana, the other half of the Moana Nui Podcast. I am also an event planner, a photographer for conventions like DragonCon, MomoCon, and even I've done some photography for DC Comics and a little voice acting and a little bit more. And of course, I'm going to hand it back over to the yin to my yang, the Renaissance woman of our time, the woman who founded this podcast, and the one who is, as she mentioned, being an advocate for the indigenous culture and our POC creatives and women of color out in the communities. I'm going to hand it back over to my sis, the lovely, the beautiful Moana.
Thank you, sis. So before we get started tonight, our topic tonight is effective delegation. And this is one I have actually been waiting anxiously for probably a number of months now, since we've planned this content out for, months ahead. And this one in particular, I think is important to everyone, regardless of where you're at in your career. We all aspire to leadership, but a huge part of leadership is building an effective team, and then once you have them in place, delegating and leveraging the skill set that you hired them for. But also like delegation in other aspects of our life too, like not trying to be the superhero and burning ourselves out, trying to achieve all the things. And when you meet these guests, you'll see why effective delegation is super important, because they are actively engaging across a number of different spaces and industries, and just doing a lot of important work for our community. So excited to have this topic. And before we do get started, one last thing, I wanted to acknowledge our sponsor, Papa'ololokahi, our home-based organization in Hawaii. They have a Native Hawaiian Summit coming up on June 1st to the 2nd. And you can register for the conference at papa'ololokahi.org, empowering Native Hawaiian health and well-being.
Yeah.
So with that said, I'll hand it back to Dana and we'll start introducing our guests.
All right. Well, of course, we're going to first introduce, our friend and also better known as the fairy godmother of CAPAW. If you missed an episode last month, she was bestowed a art piece from one of our friends within the community to bestow her crown and joy of being the fairy godmother of blessing so many people with building their careers, and so much more. And she's going to do that with you all through this podcast. So we're going to bring forth Sue Ann Hong, who's going to facilitate this lovely, lovely panel. Hello, Sue Ann.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here again. And it's so funny that you call me fairy godmother because that's what my Shiro cohort calls me. But it just makes me laugh every time you guys say that. So,
well, you are. You are a fairy godmother.
So, well, I'm really excited for tonight's discussion, and especially because these amazing women are my friends. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for them. So I think it's going to be a very, very great conversation, but also meaningful. So I'm looking forward to it.
Definitely agree. Well, of course, I'll introduce our first guest. Mary began her music career at the age of 9 in Southern Illinois, playing the oboe in the concert band. Music scholarship recipient at undergraduate and graduate level, Mary performed in many college level ensembles, including marching band, symphonic band, wind ensemble, orchestra, pep band, and musical theater. During her career, Mary taught in the classroom at the elementary and college level. As a general music teacher, uh, she developed the curriculum for pre-K through eighth grade and taught 525 students during the school year. She also had a tenure as woodwind instructor, and she also served as the director of bands and instrumental music. In addition to teaching in the classroom, Mary has taught individual flute, oboe, and piano lessons for 40 years to students of all ages and levels. So basically, she started teaching at 5. She resides in beautiful Savannah, Georgia, and is teaching individual music lessons on at the Island Music Makers. And she also performs at several venues in the coastal Georgia area. So let us welcome Mary to the podcast. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you so much. And yes, I started teaching when I was 5. And I love my work and enjoy my work. And I'm excited to talk about the art of delegation because I think it is an art. And I'll also bring my corporate background in because I had a stint in the insurance industry for about 25 years, a little bit of crossover, and happy to share some of those thoughts and learn from all of you as well.
Awesome, awesome. Well, our next panelist we have with us is another extraordinary person also. Stacy is an expert property and casualty risk management leader. She began her career with State Farm as a summer intern in 1990, also starting when she was 4, prior to graduating from Xavier University. She enjoyed leading in multiple disciplines, including auto claims, homeowner property claims, learning and development, personal injury and protection, and starting up an internal call center. Stacy has had an impact of hundreds of employees and customers while leading in Georgia, Florida, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Texas. Her most passionate role was serving in leadership for 10 years, responding to disasters across the country. Uh, she is also a lifelong reader and learner. She's currently writing her own fictional thriller, which she expects to complete in 2024. And let us welcome Stacy to the podcast. Welcome, Stacy.
Hi there. Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here with all of you lovely ladies. And good to see all of you, especially my long-term friends there. And really excited about talking today and learning so much from you and hopefully contributing to the conversation.
Awesome. Well, we're very excited to have you part of the show. And unfortunately, I am still trying to get Susie's bio, but I am going to wing it a little. And I'm going to do a little a Google search, which I happened to find when I did a Google search. Susie was featured in Forbes. So I'm going to read what Forbes wrote about her. uh, in 2015, Susie co-founded her nonprofit focused on cultural preservation, economic impact, and well-being for Pacific Islanders. The organization partners with the Pacific Island Business Alliance to support business owners and entrepreneurs in Utah. Um, Her organization launched the Pacific Island Film Festival, the National Pacific Island Violence Prevention Conference, and other events in the Utah community. And her bio just came in. All right, perfect timing. So I'll definitely say look up that Forbes article that she happened to be featured in. But she is the CEO of Pacific Island Knowledge to Action Resources, an 8-year-old community powered 501c3 nonprofit based in Salt Lake City, Utah, and the executive director. Uh, Also. And along with that, she has had a long time work begin with her life experience of being an ex-felon, a survivor of domestic violence and sexual assault with mental illness. Susie is centered in championing and empowering the most vulnerable, the under-resourced in the communities through determination, turning challenges into strengths as she has done. She is a serial social enterpriser and wearing many hats. She is a proud community health worker and certified peer support specialist. She is a community builder, a mentor, a connector, and a maximize her building value and confidence in others that self lift with the help from an amazing staff and partners providing cultural relevant education, resources, support, and opportunities for self empowerment. And let's welcome our other powerful and amazing panelist, Susie. Welcome, Susie.
So happy. I'm so happy. So welcome everyone, and thank you, Dana, for the introductions. This is a very special, like I said, segment for me because these are friends of mine, and at the same time, I trust that, when they share, they're authentic leaders, and you'll see that, as well as the fact that they keep things real. So that's what I appreciate. And so let me, Mary and Stacy and I met through State Farm Insurance Companies initially. And we had the opportunity to grow up with leaders as department heads. And so we've had a lot of interactions, but we've had different lines of business that we were supporting. Like having this kind of some common things that we've done together, it helps, but we also have very diverse experiences. Mary's got tremendous amount of music background, entrepreneurship. Stacy's got all kinds of interests as well. Susie is a force. That's all I can say. Susie is an incredible force in the PI community, in the Asian community. She's actually here with me in DC. We were with the National Asian Chamber this week at the Business Summit, and we've been meeting with congressmen and having some opportunity to share the challenges of Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, and Native Hawaiians. So I think that the diversity of conversation will be very helpful. So let me just start off with Susie. Susie, will you share just about a little bit more about your family history, your background?
Sure. I was born in the Kingdom of Tonga, and adopted to a white American family when I was 3 years old that actually worked in Tonga as well. And then moved to New Zealand and moved back to Utah when I was about 12 years old. And then went to college in Northern California. And really, my corporate background has been in travel, and worked for Expedia, worked for some large travel companies. But I've always been, I think, in Pacific Islanders and our DNA is always looking for something to do to help your community. So for years, I'd always volunteer in different organizations, and started this organization when I moved to Utah 10 years ago. It's about a 8-year-old organization right now. But was looking, I could see that my own ethnic community, I'd been working in many other ethnic communities, but not in my own, and realized Utah has the highest per capita Pacific Islanders in the continental United States. I'd never worked or lived in an area that had so many Pacific Islanders, but I could see that my community was suffering from needed resources, and I felt like it was something that I could provide and organize, and that's why we started PICTAR. Thank you.
I love the fact that you saw an issue, you saw problems, or the fact that people needed help, and you just said, I'm going to start this. I'm going to do something. So thank you for that and being such a champion of your community. Mary Dahlin, can you share about your background?
Sure, Sue Ann. Thank you. Well, I was born in the Midwest. I'm a Midwest kid. I was born in Indiana, and we moved to Southern Illinois when I was 4. I think what's unique about my situation is I was raised with 5 brothers. Hungarian on my dad's side, very strong Hungarian with his parents who were immigrants. So my dad is a first generation and I'm second generation. I don't meet a lot of folks who are second generation my age. French and Irish on my mother's side. But what's unique is my dad had 7 brothers and sisters. And with the exception of one, us, because we moved to Illinois, they all lived on the same block, next to each other, across from each other in Terre Haute, Indiana, on 24th Street. And the Hungarian Hall was at the end. And the traditions were, we made the trips back about 2.5 hours even after we moved for weddings, funerals, anniversaries, birthdays. It was really, really a sense of community. And I spent all of my summers in Indiana all the way through high school, which was kind of different, going back and forth. But most recently, I just did a count on how many times I've moved, because I like change, and I like to get into an area and make an impact and then get out. And so moving to Savannah was my 36th move. And I have lived in 12 different states, in mostly urban areas, a few rural areas. But I have just loved the journey and loved the diversity of, all of these moves and learning all the different cultures in the cities where I've lived. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. And I can tell you, she lives change. So I witnessed it. I know it. I've seen it. So Stacy Harmon, tell us about you.
Well, I tell you what, Mary, you've lived a lot more places than I have. And I thought I lived in a lot. I am originally from New Orleans, Louisiana, born and raised. And probably most of what you've heard about New Orleans is true. It is a great place to be from, but grew up and very focused in on family, on fun, on having a great time, but most of all, focusing in on making sure that we were always together as a family. We had a small family, at least my immediate family, just my sister and I, my parents. And my parents were very in tune to the importance of education. And so I am a 3rd generation graduate of Xavier University of New Orleans. Both of my parents went there and graduated from there. They actually met there. And then my maternal grandmother actually graduated from Xavier as well. So very grounded in education and grounded in education in New Orleans. But of course, you can't live there and not have a good time. And so for our traditions, there was no holiday that went by where we didn't have a huge, huge feast, a true Creole feast, where I was responsible for probably the least, which was the pralines, making the pralines. And my father was responsible for making the gumbo, which has now moved forward to the tradition is that now with my brother-in-law, he's responsible for that, for the gumbo. But always a fried turkey, without a doubt. And it was a celebration just about any time you can imagine. And so truly when you hear the saying, les habitants, I'm messing it up, let the good times roll. It is very true. That is something that we take hold of. And I'll tell you one more thing that's kind of funny, just to show you the spirit of celebration. I'll never forget one Christmas when we were very young, we got a snowflake tree. And the snowflake tree was very full, very alive by the time the holidays were over. So we just kept it up. And we kept it up and kept it up and kept it up for years. Never took it down. And so people would come over for Mardi Gras, Merry Christmas. People would come over, it's Easter, Merry Christmas. Until finally, after about 5 years, we finally had to take that thing down, but it never gave up.
Oh my God.
Exactly. It's a childhood
I
memory.
was tempted last year to keep it up, keep the tree up. It was such a pain, but that's awesome. That's an awesome story. So let me ask you, for each of you, what made you want to be in leadership? Kind of what was the calling, and kind of when did you know? So Susie, when did you know, and what caused you to go
I saw this question and I thought to myself, I don't think that I ever wanted to be a leader. It wasn't something that I set out to be. I think in the corporate world, I wasn't very assertive in pushing that envelope. But what happened was I was really good at what I did, and I could rally people around me. And I think that was the important piece of being I guess I'm a gatherer. And so I could talk people into like why we should do this and why this isn't fair and who should we go talk to and how do we fix this to be more efficient. So I never saw myself as a leader, but more of a problem solver and trying to make my job easier and being more efficient so I could be a better employee. But then what happened was people said, "Oh, I think we should promote you. You should be here," And so I really honestly have never set out to be a leader. Even as a serial entrepreneur, the reason that I started companies were that the people that I worked with, I felt like they didn't know how to do it very well. And so I would just start a company myself and do it the way I felt like it needed to be done and have been successful at that. So yeah, I didn't start out, I would never say, even to today, it's very hard for me to put that leadership hat on because I feel like I'm just one piece of the puzzle and that there's a big team that works together to make things happen. And I'll take the credit for my little piece of the puzzle, but it takes a team of people to make it actually work.
Well, as the executive director, though, you are at the helm. So there's something in you that is driving that force of leadership, whether you believe you wanted to do it or didn't want to do it. So I just was wondering if you knew what it was. So,
I mean, I think for me, always in, every corporate job I've had, they'd always call me, what's some lady that was an activist? They used to always, and I didn't grow up in this country. So like, you're like this lady. If there was a problem, people knew in the office where to go. Right. And I've never been afraid to say like, hey, this is why you should help us and listen to us as employees. And I think that probably has been a skill set of mine, that I was always looking at the underdog, how can we be better? But also could bring it to leadership to say, this is why we should, and we will be more effective, and this is how it'll affect the business, the bottom line, and could figure out the connection between what we wanted to do and what the company wanted to do.
I like that. Basically, you're creating that dotted line, creating the vision, and then how to execute.
Yeah.
is what I'm hearing. Okay, great. Thank you for sharing. Mary, what about you?
Well, I am going to agree with Susie in that I did not set out to be a leader when I went to work in business, leaving the performance world of orchestras. I set out to be an agent, although agents are leaders, small teams and leading in the community. But it was a leader in my office at State Farm, a section manager, who approached me and said, "We see this in you. We would like for you to interview for these 2 leadership positions." And after I started my first stint as a first line leader, after that, I did want to move up in higher levels of leadership. And my main driver was I saw the opportunity to really develop people, identify what their strengths were, and utilize those strengths and watch them excel. And so I remember being in an office in a higher level. Mid-manager came in as a claim manager, and someone asked me, and I said, "That's who I want to be, later on in my career." That's what I was working towards.
Well, I'm glad that they tagged you because somebody did a good job of identifying talent. So I love that.
Thank you, Sue-Ann.
Stacy, what got you interested in leadership? What was it?
It's interesting. We all have a similar story without even knowing it, because I wasn't necessarily interested in leadership, but apparently leadership was interested in me. And I was focused, it sounds like many of you, on being an individual contributor. I enjoyed what I did. I enjoyed making an impact on others in my role. And but at some point early in my career, when I was in my early 20s, I was tapped on the shoulder as well. And actually I transferred from Louisiana to Georgia at the time when I got married. And shortly after, less than a year, I was asked by some higher leaders if I was interested. And I honestly, at that point, being so young, I hadn't thought about it. And they indicated that they thought that I had the skill set to try. And so I did. I was a first line leader and had about 8 to 10 employees. And I have to tell you, I was awful. I was absolutely awful because I had the will, but I didn't yet have the skill. And that was something I had to learn over time. And fortunately, I had some great mentors and great coaches along the way who were there for me and who helped guide me and navigate me into what it means not just to be a manager and manage things, right? Because you have managers who manage things and move things around, but then you have leaders who lead people. And I really had to learn how to make that transition without somehow making a mess of the team that I had initially. And so fortunately it worked. And I tell you what, I have tried to pay it back because I had such great mentors, and I really have tried to be a mentor and a coach to so many other leaders to help set them up for success as well.
Stacy, what you said resonated with me. I think when I first got into leadership, I was like, I do not know what I'm doing. And it's like, you're just trying to be fish out of water, trying to figure it out on the job. But yeah, that brings back some memories. But Mary, when was the first time you feel like you had to delegate in your work? So what was it, and how did you know? And just kind of maybe describe that.
Well, I'm going to go back to my first teaching position at Truett McConnell College in North Georgia. I think it's called North Georgia University now. But I was right out of graduate school, and I accepted a teaching position at Truett McConnell. And I was a band director and leading a group of college students. And I was maybe 3 years older than several of the students. And I had to delegate some of the responsibilities to run the rehearsals. And I knew how to technically do my job because I had honed those skills over all the years. I knew director, I knew musicians. I did not know how to delegate. And
hang on a second. Are you guys getting feedback, or is it just me?
Yes, getting some feedback.
Okay, so Mary, I don't know if the weather's affecting your let's try again, Mary. Can you talk again and let's see if the feedback still goes?
Yes. I came right out of college and was at Truett McConnell College and in my first teaching position when I had to delegate. And it was daunting for me because I had no idea how to do it. But I started delegating the setup of the rehearsals, the breakdown of the rehearsals, some of the part assignments. And I quickly learned I had to have a process in place. I had to have accountability to make sure that things got done. And I learned a lot in that very short period of time that helped me later on in my career when I was in corporate America.
Yeah, that first time's always the difficult. Stacy, what about you? What do you remember as the first time?
Well, and I'm going to warn you, I think my connection may be a little out of sorts right now in case I freeze up a minute here. But yes, so it was early in my career, of course. After sort of becoming a little bit of a better leader and learning more, I realized I couldn't do it all. And I think when you're inexperienced, you try to do it all. You try to throw all those balls in the air and juggle all those balls, and you realize pretty quickly that you can't do that. And so at some point I had to realize really two pieces. I wanted to delegate, one, because I couldn't do it all and I needed to create a cohesive team, a cohesive unit where others could pick up. But then also something that I think is more important is that I had to, as a leader, it was part of my responsibility to help give stretch assignments to my employees and to help identify people who could use additional opportunities to showcase some of their skills and be in the spotlight. And that's something that takes a little bit of time. And so as I got a little bit more wise, as you could say, in my career as a leader, that's the piece that I really focused in on, about me and getting assistance, although we know that's certainly important and actually critical as a leader is divvying up some of that work. But it was really about who can I help shine and move on? What are my employees' goals? What are their desires? What are they interested in? And tap into some of those skills. And so that's where I went to different types of opportunities, where some of it was certainly project work, with training, lots of different areas, but really tapping into how do I get people up in front where they need to be, in front of the people who could see them and appreciate the skills that they had.
So I love the fact that you're using the delegation as a development opportunity and pushing your people to maybe higher levels of, performance and developing their skills. So that's a great way to do that. What about you, Susie? Do you remember when you had to first delegate?
Yeah, well, I was going to say I had a really good mentor, and I thought that in my first years of leadership, that meant that I had to do everything. And so I was always running around, running myself ragged, trying to do everything to try to prove myself. And my mentor said to me, Susie, being a leader is not you doing everything. It is overseeing that everything is getting done and giving your team members opportunities where they fit so that they can grow as well. And that your job, my job, she said to me, was to be looking for the person that was going to take my position. And that I should be always grooming and delegating to the people that are wanting to move forward, because if they are taking my position, that means I've moved to a different position. And so that was really good advice for me. I think with my very first true leadership role that I had was sound advice.
Well, you're saying something very important, because you may pigeonhole yourself in being the only expert, and all of a sudden you're too, quote, valuable to move out, right? You can do the job. Oh, Badge. We're getting Zoom bombed by Badge. So one of the things that I was curious about is, creating that followership. Let's say that you're delegating and you're doing the work, but how do you hold people accountable? How do you get people to commit in doing the things that they are, assigned? Or how do you do that? And what are some specific examples that you can share? So I'll start with Stacy on this one.
Mm-hmm. So that's a big question, Suzanne. That's a lot to unpack right in that. But I tell you, one of the things that stick out were a couple of things. One is a big piece is trust and teamwork. You've got to have a good team around you, people that you trust and who trust you, to make sure that you are delegating effectively for them, not just for you, as we talked about before, but also to set them up, right, for success. But one of the things, I'll give you an example of something that's really important right now that is happening, where not only am I in a situation where I am delegating to varying roles, what has happened is the folks that I've delegated to, the leaders I've delegated to, are also doing such a good job that they're delegating as well to some of their subordinates. And just to give you an idea, I've got about 80 people in my area, and then we've got so many more just in the state of Georgia. And we're doing a lot of hiring, which is a fantastic thing, but also a very scary thing at the same time, because probably about 1/3 of my workforce is new to role, meaning less than a year and often in training. And while my organization does a fantastic job with training, we've got a fantastic path to proficiency, the learning never stops. And so what we have done is once employees come and they're brand new and they've got so much to learn, right? And they're all go-getters. But once they come, what we really recognized was we have to figure out a way to continue that true learning once they hit the ground. And so my peer and I really built a framework of training and recognized we need to identify leaders to take this framework and build it up so that we can continue that training and make it week over week to bring in for our new employees. So we tapped 2 of our leaders who are, of course, very strong in training, but also very skilled and knowledgeable, but also we wanted to bring some attention to them. Maybe some folks who weren't exactly the stars that were always being highlighted. And so this was a good opportunity to make that happen. So really tapping into their skill set and giving some light to them as well. And we set it up, gave them a framework. And here's the cool thing about this, and what we recognized for them was we didn't have to build it out for them. We asked them to build it. They came back and very easily set something up that was realistic, that was manageable, that we could monitor. And once it started going, it was so successful that when they brought in talent to actually go through this process and train, really what we found is more people want to collaborate, more leaders want to be a part of it, because people like to be a part of something big. It was successful. And the team really rallied around it. And right now, it is just something that we continuously go to week over week to help build up the skill set of our newer folks coming in. So it's a great opportunity. It really is accomplishing a lot of different things at the same time. And pretty fun to watch how the team has really come together to make this happen.
I love that example because you're talking about employee engagement and putting some light on those who are not always so obvious. I love that. And then it's not the same people constantly, and you're getting results.
Right.
You're getting results. So that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure the team has a lot of buy-in because it was built by the very people who know the work.
Exactly. And you're exactly right, because so you got a lot of buy-in by the leadership team because this is benefiting their employees. And then you've got a lot of buy-in by the individual contributors, some of the employees who are doing such a good job and really showcasing their skill sets as well and getting them to know that they're a part of something even bigger. So it's a big win all around. It really is.
I love it. I love it. Susie, how about you? What is a good example that where you've, delegated, you've held people accountable? Like, what are those results?
I would say that just my own management style is that I believe if you take care of your staff, they'll take care of the business. If you listen to them, they're the ones closest working to the work. They're the experts at this, and my job is to support them. And so I have really good relationships with the people that work for me directly. It's a holistic type of work. If somebody's having a problem at home it is going to affect the way we do work, right? And so I'm very, very conscious about what the person is going through at home, and knowing them well enough that they feel comfortable to come and say to me, hey, I'm having a childcare problem. I'm going to be late, and can we work something out? So that people are not, that I'm approachable. And I think that that's been very successful for me, to care about people's their whole life, not just their work life, because what they do at home affects their work. Was that the right answer?
Well, I mean, that's a great answer, because what you're talking about is, the fact that you have to care about the person.
Yeah.
And to your point, then they'll care about the work. But, my 100% today may not be the same as my 100% tomorrow. And I think that's what you're talking about. If something's affecting me, I can't be at my best, but if you support me, I'll give extra. Yeah. And I'll make sure that, I'm more committed to Susie, because I'm going to get the stuff done because you're taking care of me.
Yeah, I have noticed that if I say, like, okay, this is our goal for this month, and how are we going to reach this, and how can we exceed this? And it seems to, everyone goes up above and beyond, because I've gone above and beyond to help others in whatever way that I've been able to do it. But I think it's really, really important that as senior managers and the people that we oversee, that we care about them as a whole person, and not just the employee that makes money for us. And good companies have figured that out. Is that being a good manager of people can make the difference on the bottom line.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mary, what are your thoughts around accountability?
Well, Susie said the word several times, we, and Stacy talked about commitment. And when I think about accountability and delegation, it is about we, the team, and it's about commitment versus just compliance. But I will share the main challenge I had in my corporate career was being assigned to teams and being the leader of a team that I did not select for a project. And that happened to me twice in my career at two different levels of my leadership, where I was assigned a team of 21 in 3 different states. And then later in my career, I was assigned a team of almost 40, which is a very large team, to design a department or redesign a department. And they were from all over the country. And basically the charge was, here's what we need and here's when we need it. Go and work with these. So kind of getting to Susie's point is the most important thing first is the accountability is on me to assign the work to the person who's going to do the work well, flourish, and really be committed to it. And so you have to hit the ground running, understanding your team. The larger the team, the more challenging it is. But when I've had my own teams, I think it's an easier job to delegate, because you know their strengths, you know their challenges, you may know what's going on in their personal life. But when you don't know them, it's a lot more work. And that's where, to me, the leadership responsibility really comes in, to know who you're working with, what they're capable of to get that job done.
You say something that's relevant, especially now with the virtual work, because we don't have necessarily those traditional ways of getting to know people. So you got to get a little creative. And so I'm curious, for each of you, what are some ways that you are getting to know your people if they're not all sitting in the same place? And they don't necessarily, by the way, have to, directly report to you. I mean, they could be a dotted line, or they could be a vendor that you're working with. But what's an example of a way that you're fostering these relationships so that you can better work with one another? I'm gonna just let that one kind of, like, whoever wants to take it.
I mean, I set up weekly meetings on Zoom with staff I try like their birthdays or something to actually take them out to lunch or to spend some time with them personally one-on-one. And it is difficult though. I mean, honestly, to build that camaraderie now in an environment that we're not sitting in the same office anymore, it is a difficult thing. But you know, I try to do the one-on-ones. We do a lot more company-oriented things together, activities to build that camaraderie, bowling night or something, because without that camaraderie that we used to have by working in the same office, teamwork is, I think, harder to do.
No, that's fair. And I'm going to go to Stacy next because she's dealing with what you're talking about, where she's got field people everywhere. So Stacy, how would you answer that?
And yes, you're right. People all over the state, and so it's not as easy as it used to be for sure. But I'll tell you, one of the things I do with my immediate leadership team is we do have our weekly meetings, and the first thing that we do before we get down to any business, the title is remarkable. And so the conversation is, and they know they're ready for it every time. I want to hear something remarkable from them about somebody else. What did somebody else do that you found remarkable? And that person could be one of their own employees. It could be one of their peers. It can be me. It can be my assistant, whoever it is. And so their first responsibility is to tell me something good, right? Let's bring some goodness into the conversation. And then I do the same thing. I tell them something about, usually it's one of them, something that happened that week. So we all start off our conversations feeling good on the right note and learning something that perhaps we didn't know that took place. So that's one of the things I do. But I also try, I arbitrarily just pick up the phone and, well, I say pick up the phone. It's not even picking up the phone, right? It's on the laptop. I go in and I call my employees and we do a video call. And just for a few minutes, because everybody's busy, everybody's got to work. And so I'll randomly call and we'll chat for a few minutes. Sometimes it's just 15 minutes just to check in, see how they're doing. And it's great to see when you just pick up the phone and call someone without an agenda, without saying, hey, I want you to tell me about this work project that you're doing. It's just more of a conversation about how they're doing. You learn so much more about them. And you learn more about what they're doing personally, and they're more open sometimes to have that conversation with you. So I enjoy doing those kinds of things. But then I also I make a point to recognize people, and I know that maybe one of the conversations that we have. We're really taking the opportunity when something has happened, especially when something's positive, to make sure that my employees know about it, whether it's over the phone or whether it's through an e-greeting or something of that nature. So those are the kinds of things I'm doing to try to stay personal with them. And then also, as much as I can, trying to get out in the field, although that's not always possible.
Well, one of the things that I'm hearing you talk about is like you're celebrating the human. It's the human, by the way. Sorry, there's sirens going on right now, going up in my head. But the like really just seeing the person, right? Not just what they're doing, the tasks or the project. And I think that human factor is huge, that I care about you as a person. I want to hear about what's going on. That goes such a long way, I think. So I like some of the suggestions that you're providing. I think those are great. Mary, how about you? Because you got students, so you got a whole different audience going on. So
I do. I do not have any direct reports currently, but I am putting a group together, an informal team that I've been working with for the last year of building out a vision that I have for a community music school on Wilmington Island. And so I've identified who I want to bring to the table and work together, in this team to build out this vision. And I learned more about communication in my corporate career than I did in all the years of course, being a musician, because you just pick up an instrument and you play. That's how you communicate. But I communicate more now than I have in my entire life. And it is phone calls, it's video chats, it's going out to lunch. I also have note cards, and I send, very slow snail mail, because all of our mail here goes through Jacksonville before it even comes back locally. But, I send those love you notes, those check-ins. And I'm also big on small gifts. I think it means a lot. It doesn't have to be anything big, and it doesn't have to be for a birthday or an anniversary. It's just, I appreciate who you are and what you bring to the table. And it could be something just very small, but it's just a way of, building that team. So the students, that's a completely different thing, because their parents are my customers. So, it's constant communication. I couldn't even tell you how many words in a day, but it's all good.
I love that. So I know that we're already at 9:24, believe it or not, but I'm curious, when somebody doesn't do what they're supposed to be doing, how do you deal with that? Give us an example. So Susie, how would you deal with, or how would you communicate, or what would you do if somebody didn't do what they needed to do?
I wanted to share something, I think, before we move it, if this is okay, that I was going to say there is a difference between working in nonprofit work and in corporate America, right? And I just wanted to share a story of something that happened to me that made me understand this well. So I had a young lady that I had given her some assignments, and she said to me, "Oh, can we meet at the library?" I said, "Sure, yeah, not a problem." So we meet at the library, and I said to her, "So why are we meeting at the library?" And she says to me, "Oh, I don't have a laptop and I don't have internet at home or a printer. And so I have to come to the library and I have to pay for the printing." I was like, "What? You don't have so I had to learn in nonprofit world to make sure that people have the tools before I can delegate to somebody, is to make sure." And I felt terrible. This was a young lady that was struggling to get an assignment done that I'd asked her to do. She never once said, "I don't have a laptop. I don't have internet or a printer at home or internet." She did everything out of the library. So she asked me. So that was a very valuable lesson for me, because in corporate America, there is an assumption that everybody has the tools that they need, right? And I switched over to nonprofit, and I was still under the assumption. And I felt terrible when this young lady told me. I said, "Well, so note to self was, in nonprofit world, is, Susie, before you delegate, you have to make sure that people have, number one, the tools to do that job, and you have to make sure that they have the understanding to do the job." And that's something that I've learned from moving from corporate America to nonprofit, is that I always made an assumption that everybody knows how to write an email, that everybody knows how to look at a spreadsheet, right? But in the nonprofit world, when you work with underserved communities, that is not always the case. And I had a wide, an easy awakening with this when I felt terrible that this young lady had been spending her own money. She'd been trying to do everything on her phone, couldn't print.
Wow.
And wow, that was an epiphany for me that taught me to make sure that my staff have the tools that they need, both physically, and that they have the education. And I couldn't make any assumptions in that people knew how to write an email, that they knew how to do a spreadsheet, that they knew all the things that in corporate America that we would hire somebody with those skills already. So I just wanted to share that before moving to the next thing, is when there's accountability. I'm grateful for the type of leadership that I do share, is that every person that I have let go knows that they were going to get let go, right? It was very clear that if they did not do these things, that they were going to be let go, and gave them every opportunity and help that I could to make sure that they were able to achieve. But at the end of the day, when they couldn't achieve it, 9 times out of 10, they were telling me really sorry that they didn't do this, and that they understood. So I think building those relationships with people really helps on the back end. If you have to let somebody go, is that there is already a mutual understanding. If you've laid that out for people, the accountability, and that if you don't do these things, this is what's going to happen. So when that day comes, there is no surprises there for
All
anybody.
that. Yeah, that should not be a surprise, to your point, if
Yeah.
you're communicating all along and setting expectations. That's great. All right, what about Mary?
I would say having the advantage actually of working for large corporations, and I worked for 4 different large corporations in my insurance career. We had structure around setting expectations, following up, midterm check-in, and then holding folks accountable. We also had support in every role I had in corporate America with human resources to help you if you needed some communication guidance on, or, how are you going to handle this situation? So I would say from in that corporate world environment, the challenge for me was rarely my direct reports because of that structure, but it would be on projects. When those folks did not report to you, how are you going to have that conversation? And I would say the most important thing is just seek to understand, be very direct with, this is where we are, and seek to understand. And one thing I had to learn early in my career is move on. Just move on quickly, let go. This is the mistake. We're in a reset, and move on. And I think when you're inexperienced, at least I was early in my career, you have a tendency to hang on a little bit too long.
Great advice. That is very true. That is very true. Stacy, what about you?
I'll say that when I'm looking at tactical pieces and looking at projects and actually works and deadlines, I follow through on message, model, and monitor. And a big piece looking at mistakes is when you monitor, you sometimes are able to catch the big mistakes and make them smaller mistakes. And so monitoring really the check-in, whether it's checking in, whatever the schedule is it weekly, is it monthly, is it quarterly, just depending on how big this project is, so that we can eliminate some of those mistakes that will likely creep in. And so I found some success with that. But the key piece is trying to do that and determine that there are mistakes. How do we identify them and make sure we don't again, that they don't creep into the next project? And that's a piece that is so critical. And I say I have to agree 100% with Mary in that we're fortunate. We're working within corporate America. We do have a lot of tools that we can use when it's come to the point where you have messaged, when you are monitoring, when you are coaching and guiding someone, and they continue to perhaps fall down a certain path. Then we've got resources to help guide them and set them up for success, or coach them perhaps out the door. And hopefully it is the former, not the latter. But it is absolutely critical to have those checks and balances in place. If you've got some type of project, you've got something that you have in the works, you've got to make sure that your people are on point as much as possible.
I love you guys. These are so many lessons here. Before it's already a couple minutes past the time, but I do want to give each of you a quick second to just talk about one piece of advice. When you talk about effective delegation, what's one piece of advice you would leave our audience with, starting with Stacy?
I'd say know the why. Why are you delegating? I think is pretty important. Are you delegating because you need to accomplish something and get it off your plate, and you can just simply give it to someone who's got the skill set, or are you trying to develop someone else? So I'd say the why is pretty important when you're thinking about how you're going to move that work.
Absolutely. Mary?
I would say when you make the decision to delegate, so hopefully it's your decision, you've made the decision to share. You share in the process, share in the results, and you need to be fully prepared with everything that encompasses when you're sharing.
Absolutely. Susie?
Making sure that people have the tools, both physically and skill-wise, before you delegate, so that you're setting people up to succeed and not to fail.
Absolutely. And I'm going to say check in and make sure that you're helping to remove any obstacles. If there, sometimes, the person's trying to get the job done and they have obstacles, and maybe it's your job to remove it. So I would say that this was an incredible conversation. My friends, I'm so grateful that you joined me tonight. Thank you so much as we celebrate Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. This was a great leadership conversation, and I appreciate it. So with that, Moana and Dana, do you want to come back on?
Yes. Amazing, amazing. Another conversation. One thing me and Moana says, Sue-Ann knows how to pick people for panels, and she brings the creme de la creme of the, and no one has ever been on the panel. Just do one thing. You all are doing so many things. I know me and Moana can't talk, but it's that connection of amazing women doing amazing things in their path. And we're so privileged to have each and every one of you on the show tonight. Moana, you have any last words to say too?
Yes, I just wanted to say, like, wow, there's so many nuggets that were dropped tonight, and
Yes.
probably more times than I would like, where like I felt poked, like, yeah, that's you. Those are the mistakes that you have made. But on the flip side, on the positive side, I'm glad that it's like it's not just me. These are just the things that happen, and you learn to kind of like let it go, as one of the panelists say, and keep moving, because it really does no good to kind of wallow in that stuff. You got to keep the trains moving. So. Thank you, ladies. And Susie, your comment on the tools part, I think that is a huge distinction between nonprofit work and corporate teams. So thank you for calling that out. And as Dana mentioned, Sue-Ann, thank you for always bringing such high quality people and content for our community to benefit from. I know we had a couple comments asking about, can they catch it again? Yes, the replay will be available on our YouTube channel, on Twitch, and then shortly after, hopefully soon, it'll be available on our podcast platform, so everybody can listen to that on your favorite podcast. So yes, ladies, with that said, thank you so much for your valuable time. And we hope that you will, be a community member here of the Moana Nui Podcast. If there are ways that we can help to support your work in other avenues, we'd love to have you guys come on back.
Yes, we gotta have Stacy come back next year with her new book coming out. So we definitely gotta have her come back, promote her new book.
Yes, absolutely. And Susie, I think there's some ways for us to collaborate too coming up soon. So Mary, thank you for your music. Music is like one of those things that is a universal love language. So thank you for bringing that to all of us and keeping that legacy alive as well.
Yes.
All righty. Well, with that said, I think we're good, Dana.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you for joining us, and definitely tune in next week for our final panel for a NHPI month, where we're going to talk about the educational barriers Native Hawaiian students, and a lot of times you see Indigenous students have within the educational system. So we're going to have a panel discussing those aspects and what we can do to bridge that gap for our youth to have a better advantage as they step into the adult world and into the corporate worlds and work world. So definitely tune in. That panel will be at 8:30 p.m. next Thursday. Of course, if you can't make it like today's panel, you can rewatch it on our YouTube and Twitch channels. You will see the recordings available there for you to watch. So everyone, thank you for tuning in. Have a great rest of your evening, and we'll talk to you all soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye.
So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will.
If this the land of the free, it was a freedom then, when they annexed Hawaii and called it Cedar Lands, without any type of payment and no signing off. Called themselves a republic in 1894. 1.2 million acres overtaken from the native Hawaiians. When they resisted, the West retaliated in violence and erasure. The Hawaiian language is banned as part of colonialism's plan to expand, yeah.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Kaho'olawe as a part of their ongoing war with Asia. Used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. No regard for all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. We will.
So if you put Hawaii in a perspective, well, Black and Asian history is interconnected. Considering the fight with the Pacific, then of course versus Asia, they was treated as a middleman for war, but didn't let the Western colorism run its course. Cause dark skin was a sign of dignity to core. The land was taken in the name of capitalism, when prior to it was an actual kingdom. Clap back at the system.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Kaho'olawe as a part of their ongoing war with Asia. Used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. No regard for all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. We will.